You need to understand what happened on the Appalachian Trail near Wayah Bald, because the man responsible has never been charged with a single crime. In June of 2019, deep within the Nantahala National Forest in the mountains of western North Carolina, a 31-year-old registered dietitian named Sarah Kimball set out alone on the Appalachian Trail. Day 27 of a thru-hike she had spent 2 years saving for, and 3 more convincing herself she deserved. Everything seemed routine until a blister on her left heel swelled to the size of a quarter at a remote road crossing near Wayah Bald. That's when a truck pulled off the gravel shoulder. That's when a man named Tom Brennan stepped out with a cooler full of free food and a very specific set of questions. By the time Sarah made it back to Charlotte 3 weeks later, she understood, with absolute clarity, that the man knew more about her than anyone alive. Not because she had told him, because she had been asleep when he found out. What you are about to hear is the account of what Sarah Kimball found in the Appalachian Mountains. This is how it happened. Sarah Kimball was not the type of person anyone who knew her would have expected to do this. She was 5'4", 31 years old, a registered dietitian who had spent 6 years at a Charlotte hospital outpatient clinic, counting other people's macros and telling them to drink more water. She left the job on a Tuesday in February, gave 2 weeks' notice, cried in her car for 40 minutes, and told exactly 2 people, her sister Danny and her therapist. Her pack weighed 24 pounds fully loaded. She talked to herself when she was tired, narrating small decisions out loud the way a person does when they've been alone long enough that the silence starts to feel like pressure. The Nantahala National Forest in June is thick, green, and indifferent. Rhododendron tunnels, creek crossings, root-tangled switchbacks, cool air that smells like wet rock and pine resin. She had been listening to the same 3 podcasts on shuffle for 3 days and had stopped registering the words. Her left heel had been building since mile 6 that morning. By the time the forest road crossing at Wayah Bald came into view, a gravel pull-off, a brown AT marker post, a blue Yeti cooler sitting in the shade of a hemlock. Her gait had collapsed into a limp. She dropped her pack against the post, sat on a flat rock, pulled her shoe off. The blister was bad. A fluid dome the diameter of a $50, skin already thinning at the edge. The forest sounded right. A woodpecker somewhere east, knocking in irregular bursts. A drainage creek moving somewhere below the road. Wind through the canopy, the long, slow sound of the mountain breathing. The cooler had a laminated sign taped to the lid. Trail magic. Help yourself. She opened it. Gatorade, energy bars, trail mix. Her fingers closed on something hard at the bottom. Small, plastic. A black USB drive, no label, no markings. She held it up, looked at it for 2 seconds, dropped it in her hip belt pocket. Her brain was on her heel. She did not hear him approach. No crunch of gravel, no truck door, no footsteps on the road. Tom Brennan was simply there, 6 feet away, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at her foot with the expression of someone who had seen this before. "That one's going to give you trouble," he said. "You got a needle in that pack?" The woodpecker was still knocking somewhere east, indifferent, rhythmic, like a clock that doesn't know what time it is. Tom Brennan was 52, broad through the shoulders, the kind of physical presence that makes a space feel smaller. Carhartt jacket, work boots, a Rotary Club cap. His truck was a primer gray F250 on the shoulder. No front plate, cracked passenger mirror, a peeling Share the Road sticker on the rear bumper. He spoke slowly, without urgency, the way a person speaks when they are used to other people waiting for them to finish. 11 years running trail magic coolers in the Nantahala. Every crossing between Wesser and Wayah Bald memorized by GPS waypoint. He crouched in front of her and opened the blister kit and began without asking. She let him. She was 27 days into the wilderness, and the competence of another human being doing a practical task was almost unbearably comforting. His house was 15 minutes downslope. He offered it the way he offered everything, matter-of-factly, as if the decision had already been made and she was simply catching up. Guest room, running water, a real bed. She got in the truck. Her sister, Danny, had a check-in call scheduled for noon on June 16th, 48 hours away. Danny had the trailhead parking lot written on a notepad by her kitchen phone. That was the entirety of Sarah's emergency infrastructure. The house smelled like pine sol and wood stain both at once, so consistent room to room it registered less like a smell and more like a temperature. Every surface clean, dish rack empty and dry. A vase of dried wildflowers on the kitchen table, not decorative, just old, kept there so long they had become part of the furniture. He made soup from a can, and did not eat himself, sat across the table while she ate and asked questions. Not in what he asked, in what he already seemed to know. She said she had been a dietitian. He nodded and said, that must have been draining. Emotionally, I mean, not just physically. She had not mentioned burnout, had not mentioned why she left. She had said dietitian, and he had finished a sentence she hadn't started. He asked whether anyone was tracking her location. She answered without thinking. He nodded, not writing anything down, not checking his phone, just nodding the way someone does when they are filing something away. He asked if she slept well on trail. She said she did now. Crashed hard once she adjusted. Deep sleep out here is a gift, he said. Your body just lets go. She told herself he was making conversation, that she was reading menace into kindness because she had been alone for 27 days and her nervous system had recalibrated toward threat. She finished the soup. He showed her the guest room and said goodnight. The hallway smelled different. Older, closed air, like a room opened on a schedule. Both walls were covered floor to ceiling in framed photographs. Hikers. Dozens of them. All smiling, all with Tom, each with a small white index card below it in neat blue ballpoint, a name, a trail section, a date. Michaela, Wayah Bald, April 2017. Renata, Nantahala River, September 2018. She counted 43 before she stopped. It should have felt warm. She stood there trying to make it feel that way, and almost got there. Then she reached the last photograph. Tom alone at the Wayah Bald Road crossing, standing next to the blue Yeti cooler. No hiker beside him. The index card said 2 words. Almost stayed. She pushed the button lock on the guest room door and lay down without changing clothes. Sleep took her anyway. She woke sometime in the night and her pack was not where she had left it. She had set it against the wall beside the door. It was now at the foot of the bed, near the window, zipper slightly open. She told herself she had moved it in her sleep. She lay back down with her hand on the pack strap and stared at the ceiling. Almost stayed. Past tense, like a record of a failure. She didn't let herself finish the question that came with it, but it was already there, sitting in the room with her, the way a sound stays after it stops. She woke to the guest room door open. Not all the way, a crack, 4 inches, maybe 5, letting in a thin slice of hallway light. She registered it the way you register something wrong before you can name what it is. A change in the air pressure of the room, a slight shift in the quality of the dark. She sat up. Tom was standing in the hallway, visible through the crack, the right side of his face, one shoulder, the line of his jaw. Not moving, not speaking, simply standing there in the dark in the particular way of someone who has not arrived by accident, but has arrived at a destination. He did not startle when she sat up. That was the thing, the absolute absence of surprise. A person caught somewhere they shouldn't be flinches, or explains, or apologizes. Tom did none of those things. He looked at her through the crack with the same measured patience he'd had at the kitchen table, and said quietly, "Thought I heard something." He pulled the door shut. Footsteps, unhurried, back down the hallway. A door closing at the far end of the house. Sarah did not move for a full minute. Then she got up, picked up her pack, carried it to the bed, and sat on the edge of the mattress with both shoes on and the pack in her lap and her back against the headboard. She did not go back to sleep. She sat there and listened to the house breathe, the creak of the structure settling, the refrigerator cycling on and off in the kitchen, wind outside. And she ran through every reasonable explanation available to her, the way a person does when the unreasonable one is the only one that fits. Her former supervising dietitian, Dr. Renee Holloway, used to say, "The patients who worry me most aren't the ones who ask too many questions. They're the ones who never ask anything at all. They just watch and collect." Sarah had thought Holloway was talking about a specific type of eating disorder patient. She understood now that Holloway had been talking about something larger. She understood now exactly what kind of person watches and collects. Both shoes, pack strap, back against the headboard. Do not make noise. Do not turn the light on. The footsteps had not been surprised. She sat there counting the minutes by the refrigerator cycles and trying to remember whether she had actually locked the door before she fell asleep, or whether she had only meant to. Gray light under the curtain. Birds starting outside. Enough. She stood up slowly, heels screaming, and told herself she was leaving. Told herself this the way you tell yourself something you need to believe fast, before the part of your brain that makes excuses catches up. In the morning, Tom made eggs, set a plate in front of her and asked what time she was heading out, his voice carrying the same easy domestic warmth of someone who had done this 100 times, which, she knew now, looking at the hallway wall from her seat at the kitchen table, he had. She told him after breakfast. He nodded, refilled her coffee without asking. Outside, the mountain was doing what it always did in the early morning. Mist sitting low in the tree line, the first birds working, the gravel driveway catching the gray light. Ordinary, indifferent. The same forest that had felt like freedom 3 weeks ago now felt like a perimeter. She ate the eggs. She smiled at him across the table. She was already calculating the pack, the poles against the wall, the distance between her chair and the door. The way a person calculates when they understand that the next few minutes are going to require a performance, and that the performance has to be flawless, and that there is no one in these mountains who knows exactly where she is. 48 hours until Danny called. A lot of trail between here and that phone call. She took a sip of coffee and smiled again and said the eggs were perfect. She told him she was heading out after breakfast, picked up her pack from beside the chair, reached for her poles leaning against the wall. Tom said her foot wasn't ready. He said it conversationally, not a question, not a suggestion. The way he said everything, with the quiet authority of someone who had already processed the situation and arrived at the conclusion ahead of her. If she pushed on that heel today, she'd do real damage. A blister like that opened up wrong could end a thru-hike. He'd never forgive himself if she walked out of here and blew out her foot on the next ridge. She said she appreciated it. She really did. She'd take it slow. His hand came down on her shoulder. Not hard, not aggressive, just present, a large, certain hand steering her back down into the chair with a pressure that was calm and total, the way you'd redirect a child who doesn't understand yet why they need to sit. She sat. Her pack was still on her back. She did not know how to stand back up without making it a confrontation, and every nerve in her body was telling her that a confrontation was the one thing she could not afford. He crouched in front of her and removed her shoe without asking, unwrapped the compression dressing from the night before, examined the heel with 2 fingers, pressing the edges of the blister with clinical detachment, narrating as he worked. The fluid needed to go. The tape job needed to be redone from scratch. She needed a proper heel lock, or she'd shred the skin on the descent. His voice was unhurried. His hands were steady. The kitchen smelled like eggs and coffee and something underneath, that same closed-air smell from the hallway. He set a mug of tea in front of her when he was done, sat across the table, watched her drink it. She smiled at him. She heard herself say that the tape job felt so much better, that she didn't know what she would have done without him, that she hoped the next hiker who came through understood how lucky they were to have someone like this on the trail. She was performing warmth the way a person performs calm on a ledge, not because she felt it, but because it was the only thing between her and the drop. He refilled her tea, slid it back in front of her, said, "Just relax. You've been pushing hard. 1 more hour won't cost you anything." She drank half the second cup. She asked about his trail magic routes, how he decided which crossings to stock, how long he'd been doing it. He talked. She listened and nodded and smiled and counted seconds. He was between her and the door, his chair angled toward the hallway, her poles against the wall, 6 feet away. He refilled his own coffee and turned to set the pot back on the burner. In that half-second, his back to her, she understood that this was the only window she was going to get. She was going to use it, or she was going to be here for another hour, waiting for a window that might not come again. She stood, pack already on, reached for her poles in one motion, said she really had to make miles before the rain, said it light and warm and grateful, already moving toward the door. He turned from the counter, looked at her, did not move. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, a bird called once and stopped. The refrigerator cycled on. She kept her hand on the door handle, and her smile in place and her voice steady, and she thanked him one more time, genuinely, warmly, the most convincing performance of her life. And after a moment that lasted longer than any moment she had ever experienced, he nodded once, slowly, and said, "You know where I am." He handed her 2 energy bars on the porch. She took them. She thanked him. She walked down the porch steps and down the gravel driveway, and she did not run. The driveway was visible from the kitchen window, and she could feel his eyes on her back the entire length of it. But the moment the tree line took her, her pace became something that was not quite running, only because her heel would not allow it. Pack bouncing, poles clicking double time, eyes straight ahead. 3 miles up trail, she reached a log crossing a creek and sat down hard and put her face in her hands, not crying, just breathing. The creek moved around the log, cold and indifferent, and the forest made its ordinary sounds, and after a while her hands stopped shaking. She never took a photo of the wall, never copied down a single name from those index cards. She had his phone number saved in her phone. He had given it to her at the road crossing, and she did not call 911. She got up, adjusted her pack, and kept hiking north. Half the people hearing this would have done exactly the same thing. Half would not. There is no clean answer for why. She finished the hike, not the whole trail. 9 more days before her heel forced a decision at a road crossing near Fontana Dam, where she sat on her pack in the rain for 20 minutes and then called Danny to come get her. She did not tell Danny about Tom. She did not tell anyone about Tom. She told herself there was nothing concrete to tell. A man who stood in a hallway, a pack that may have moved on its own, a feeling that proved nothing. She filed it under bad instincts and tried to let it sit there. Back in Charlotte, she unpacked methodically. Gear laid out on the bedroom floor, stuff sacks emptied, food bag trash consolidated. The USB drive came out of her hip belt pocket and sat on her dresser for 11 days. She picked it up on a Tuesday night. No particular reason. She plugged it into her laptop with a USB adapter. One folder, titled with a date and a name. June 14th, 2019. Sarah. Inside, 14 audio files labeled by timestamp. She opened the first one. Wind. Footsteps on soft ground. The creak of rhododendron branches pushed aside in the dark. Then stillness. The specific stillness of someone who has stopped moving and is now watching something that cannot see them back. Her own voice. Distant, tinny, caught on a microphone from somewhere in the tree line. She was singing, badly, cheerfully, the way she did when she thought she was alone. A half-remembered song from a road trip she and Danny had taken in 2014. She remembered that morning, day 24, a long descent through a laurel tunnel, nobody on trail for 6 hours in either direction. She had felt completely, perfectly alone. Tom's breathing filled the foreground of the recording, slow and steady, close to the microphone. Then his voice, just above a whisper. She is very, very pretty. A long pause, the sound of her footsteps fading north on the trail below him. She doesn't know I'm here. She never knows. The files ran across 4 days. Day 24, day 25, day 26, day 27. The morning she reached the Wayah Bald Road crossing with a blister the size of a $50 and a blue Yeti cooler waiting for her in the shade of a hemlock. He had been behind her the entire time, watching her make camp, watching her eat, watching her sleep in her tent at night with a recording device pointed at the mesh. He had known exactly where she would be. He had known exactly when her heel would give out. The cooler had not been trail magic. It had been a destination he had built for her specifically, stocked and labeled and waiting at the precise road crossing where he knew she would have to stop. She closed the laptop, opened it again, closed it. She called the ranger station the next morning, explained everything, filed a formal report 3 days later at a field office in Bryson City. Tom Brennan was cooperative when contacted, said he didn't know what she was talking about, said he helps hikers, has been doing it for 11 years. The ranger told Sarah that without corroborating witnesses, without a second victim willing to come forward, there was no threshold for a search warrant. The case sits open with no activity. The photographs are still on his wall. 43 names on index cards, plus one card with no name, plus one that has Sarah's name on it now. Somewhere in the Nantahala National Forest, the trail magic coolers are still at the road crossings. He is still out there, watching the trail, waiting for the right person to come limping around the bend. She is very, very pretty. She doesn't know I'm here.